It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on Twitter, _ Jonathan Smith, if you want to watch and follow me there. Maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps. Maybe you're just listening via 1430 AM. Either way, I greatly appreciate it. Big show in store today. A little bit of Anthony Richardson, IU hoops as they get ready to play Purdue tomorrow night. But I want to start with the Colts. I want to start with Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson has hopefully, who knows, but hopefully he's already started his offseason in terms of, training with Chris Hess, who's going to be the savior of his career. Anthony Richardson's going to come back and complete 80% of his passes because he's working with Chris Hess. At least that's what some people think. But Anthony Richardson is in the process of trying to prove that he can be the guy and that he's worth a big-time extension and he's worth that fifth-year option. Okay, and Colts fans are certainly hopeful that Anthony Richardson develops. Everyone in that building, Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, all of those players that signed extensions to stay with the Colts because they believed in Anthony Richardson. Everyone in that building wants him to be the guy. I have to ask a question, though, that I think is very important. Does it even matter if he ends up being the guy? Does it matter if Anthony Richardson develops into a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL? Even if he reaches his full potential, does it matter as long as Patrick Mahomes is playing in the NFL? The Chiefs and Eagles are set to be playing for the Super Bowl once again in a little over a week matchup of that Super Bowl from 2 years ago in 2023. And the legend of Patrick Mahomes just seems to grow more and more every single year, every single postseason. We just watched 18 weeks of NFL football. We saw the Chiefs lose one real game, and we walked away from that season I don't even think that they played very well. And they went 15-2, 15-1 in the games that the starters actually played in. I mean, it's incredible. And then all of a sudden in the playoffs, it's holy crap, Chiefs are pretty good. This legend of Patrick Mahomes continues to grow. I mean, is there any other number that you need other than the worst year of his career? He lost in overtime in the AFC Championship game. Seriously, that's crazy. And he just kind of finds a way to turn it on in the playoffs. Did you know that Patrick Mahomes has won more NFL postseason games than any quarterback in the history of the NFL when his defense has given up 29 points or more? Pretty crazy. He solidified that record last Sunday when they beat the Bills. And, as I was thinking about this last night, I was like, you know what? Let's look at the history of this, right? Because the closest person to Patrick Mahomes is Tom Brady, or rather, I should say, the closest person to Tom Brady is Patrick Mahomes, even though, Patrick Mahomes is about to play in his fifth Super Bowl before he turned 30, if I remember correctly. Tom Brady only played in 3. Tom Brady, though, played in the NFL for 23 years, missed 1 year due to tearing his ACL, didn't play but one game and threw 3 passes in that game, his rookie season. Okay, so 22 seasons, he was the definite, solidified starting quarterback of the New England Patriots. And to quote the kids nowadays, everyone knew that he was a problem. Okay, he won 7 Super Bowls, lost 3. Here are the list of quarterbacks that won a Super Bowl during Tom Brady's 22-year career after his rookie season. Brad Johnson won it with the Buccaneers. The Steelers and Big Ben Roethlisberger. Miss him, man. He won 2. Peyton Manning won 2. Eli Manning won 2. Drew Brees won 1. Aaron Rodgers won 1. Joe Flacco won 1. Russell Wilson won 1. Was almost 2. Probably should have been 2, but, throwing a pick at the goal line instead of handing it off to Marshawn Lynch. It's going to haunt them for forever. So Russell Wilson won 1. Nick Foles won 1 with the Eagles. That was 2017. Patrick Mahomes won 1 late in Tom Brady's career. And then Matthew Stafford won the Super Bowl in Tom Brady's final year of his career. So in Brady's 22 years, that he was the official starting quarterback for the New England Patriots. 11 other quarterbacks won a Super Bowl. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them, the exceptions being Joe Flacco, Nick Foles, Eli Manning, and Brad Johnson. The other guys were amongst the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL when they won their Super Bowls. Okay. And for a lot of those years of Tom Brady, where it was peak him, the other best quarterbacks in the NFL were Peyton Manning, who won 2, Ben Roethlisberger, who won 2, won the year that Tom Brady tore his ACL, Drew Brees, who won 1, and Aaron Rodgers. Those were the 5 best quarterbacks of kind of that era of Tom Brady. Then in the second half of Brady's career, Mahomes shows up and wins 1, and Matthew Stafford wins 1 late. And both of those guys have been 2 of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL over the past, 4, 5, 6, 7 years now. Okay. And then Russell Wilson in the early 2010s, that was his peak. He was incredible those years. They also had an outstanding roster around him. And when you look at the 4 exceptions of the 4 quarterbacks who won Super Bowls while Tom Brady was around, they had these incredible rosters. I mean, Joe Flacco had that formidable Ravens defense with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed on the back end, and Terrell Suggs when he was a beast coming off the edge, and like dominant defense. And Nick Foles had this incredibly complete roster with a good defense, and Alshon Jeffrey was big in the playoffs, and Eli Manning, solid weapons, Plexico Burress making a play, and a defense with just this nasty collection of pass rushers led by the one and only Michael Strahan. Hey, Brad Johnson had a defense that only gave up 37 points in 3 playoff games. They gave up 10-6 and then 21 in the Super Bowl, which 21 was, a decent number, but it didn't matter because they scored 38 in that game or 48. I don't remember. Either way, they scored a lot of points, and they had a defense that was pretty stellar. Okay, to win the Super Bowl, while an all-time great is playing in the league at the same time, you have to have one of 2 things. You have to have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Anthony Richardson has a ton of potential. Okay, I have talked about it ad nauseum. Okay, the potential. Like, just go to Twitter, search for Anthony Richardson, and you're going to see that play of him slipping against the Texans and then throwing a 65-yard bomb to Alec Pierce. And then, and then there's some rant above it talking about just the absolute potential of Anthony Richardson. Okay, we all know about it. The speed, the size, he can dunk a basketball. Congratulations. Super athletic, big arm, all those things. Let me ask a question, though. Even if he fully develops, okay, like he, maxes out his abilities full out, will he be better than Josh Allen? Probably not. Will he be better than Lamar Jackson? I don't think so. Will he be better than Joe Burrow? I don't know. Probably not. Okay, and then will he be better than whoever you think the 5th best quarterback in the NFL is? Like, maybe he winds up better than Jaden Daniels. I don't know. That dude's really good as a rookie. Okay, Matthew Stafford's about to retire. Could he end up being better than Justin Herbert? I don't think so. I think Justin Herbert's really good. Could he be better than Jordan Love? Probably. Whoever you think that 5th best quarterback is the best version of Anthony Richardson, better than him. Is the best version of Anthony Richardson one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL? And after watching him these first 2 years, the answer is probably not. Anthony Richardson's peak is Cam Newton. That's what I think his peak is. A big, fast, physical specimen running quarterback who has these streaks where he's incredibly accurate or incredibly inaccurate. When you look at, Cam Newton's 11-year career, he had one great year. One great year. This is the year that, the Panthers won 15-1 and he won the MVP, and he was really, really good that year. He was healthy. That was part of it. Okay, he played great. He did. And then the rest of his career was meh. And as of today, that kind of feels like Anthony Richardson's peak. Feels like the best version of Anthony Richardson is a good quarterback who can win you some games. Maybe he has a year like Cam Newton did, and he's completing all these passes, and he's running for touchdowns, and the Colts are really good because of that. But every other year is just kind of like, yeah, we can live with him as our starting quarterback. That was kind of it. And then you look at the other teams that won Super Bowls. You know, the Nick Foles-led Eagles, the Eli Manning Giants twice. They had elite rosters, and that's the other option for the Colts. If they want to get to that point where they can win a Super Bowl while Patrick Mahomes is still around, build an elite roster. And the really frustrating thing about that is, like, that doesn't seem to work. It just doesn't. Okay, the Steelers have an amazing roster every year. They always have one really good receiver. They always have a good offensive line. They always seem to be able to run the football. They've always got a great defense. Mike Tomlin, great head coach. They haven't won a playoff game in like 6 years. You know, having a great roster doesn't always equal wins. The Eagles had an impeccable roster in 2023. That team was so good, and they couldn't beat Patrick Mahomes. The 49ers, 2 times now, have put together these outstanding rosters where you look around and it's like, this guy's an all-pro. It's George Kittle and, you know, Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and, you know, Christian McCaffrey, and defense, it's Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and all these really good players. Didn't matter. Couldn't beat Mahomes. They couldn't. The Bills roster this year, best roster they've had with Josh Allen. Josh Allen, the second best quarterback in the NFL. A guy who, throughout his postseason history, has been nothing short of spectacular. The Bills put together, you know, an outstanding offensive line. They gave up the least amount of sacks in the NFL this year. They gave him a running back in James Cook, who was a 1,000-yard rusher and can catch the ball out of the backfield. And they went out and they traded for Amari Cooper. And then defensively, they got this Matt Milano guy who's really good. And, you know, Ed Oliver and Von Miller and just a lot of really good players with the second best quarterback in the NFL. And they couldn't get it done. It didn't really seem to matter. And the Eagles, they have the best or the second best roster in the NFL this year. I would argue that it's the Lions who had the best roster. They just ran into a lot of injuries. And I don't think it's really going to matter. Nothing seems to matter for as long as Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are together. Okay, the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes are so good that even if Anthony Richardson develops and he reaches his full potential, will it matter? Or will the Colts just kind of wind up like the rest of the teams in the AFC, where it's like, great, made the playoffs. Maybe you win a playoff game, you win your wild card round, and then you hope and you pray that you aren't matched up with Patrick Mahomes in the divisional round, because if you are, then you're probably going to lose. And then you hopefully move on to the AFC Championship game where, you know, the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, and Arrowhead Stadium are waiting on you. And it's just kind of like, all right, this is the end of the road. It's where it feels like the NFL is right now. And look, you know, at some point, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen will probably break through and win a Super Bowl, but something terrible is going to have to happen. You know, Patrick Mahomes is going to have to get hurt or something along those lines, or the majority of the Chiefs roster is going to have to get banged up. That's one of the most impressive things about this three-peat. They've just been able to keep all these guys healthy. It's really, really impressive. And speaking of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, let's say that year happens where, you know, Mahomes gets hurt, or the majority of that Chiefs roster is super banged up and Mahomes can't seem to overcome it. Do we really think Anthony Richardson is going to progress to a point where he's better than Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson? Probably not. Sorry, I feel really negative today, but that's just kind of where I'm at, because you look at the NFL and you look at how many good teams there are. Like, the AFC is absolutely loaded. Like the Ravens these last 2 years have been so freaking good. You know, this year, you know, they're putting up all these crazy offensive numbers, and the defense, you know, in the second half of the year finally kind of came around, and they couldn't even beat the Bills. And then you got the Bills who, you know, beat the Chiefs by 9 points in the regular season. Everyone's saying this is the year. Yeah, it doesn't matter because it's Mahomes. And I don't know. I look at Anthony Richardson. I look at the Colts roster, and every time I do, I compare it to these last two team standings, the Eagles and the Chiefs, and they just feel so incredibly far away. Anthony Richardson has to develop more. If he does, will it matter? I don't think it will because Mahomes and Andy Reid are, you know, inevitable at this point. They're Thanos with the 5 stones. Like, doesn't really matter what you do at this point. And then you look at the rest of the roster because if the Colts are, going to compete for a Super Bowl with Anthony Richardson, like because he's probably never going to be one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL, like you have to have this outstanding roster. And the Colts aren't close to that. Oh, what you mean? We got Defoe. Yeah, Defoe's great. Love Defoe. But no, like you need a little bit more than Defoe. You need not Jalen Jones playing corner for you. You need Zaire Franklin to not be your best, linebacker. There's a lot of things that have to change. Okay. And so it's just, they feel so far away. They do. And so, yeah, give me the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I've got no doubts about that. Big time show today. Luke Brennaman, he's joining at 11. We're going to talk IU basketball, all those things. Pacers, they picked up a big win last night. Very impressive on their part. I knew that they were going to win early. It was so blatantly obvious. We were 2 minutes into that game last night of Pistons and Pacers, and I knew that the Pacers were going to win. I'll tell you how I knew when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes. The real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
The real Jonathan Smith Show. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Twitter, you're in your car, the Indy Sports Ticket app, whatever it is. I greatly appreciate it. The Indiana Pacers beat the Pistons last night, and, you know, people are going to say, oh, it's a rivalry because Isaiah Stewart, a.k.a. Beef Stew, got tossed and technicals were given out, and, you know, last couple games have gotten kind of chippy. Pacers have won 7 of the last 8 against the Pistons. It is not a rivalry. Okay. You know, in order for rivalries to be good, like, you know, both teams have to actually win. That's why, you know, Michigan and Ohio State, not a rivalry because Michigan just seems to win every single year. Anyway, Pistons and Pacers last night, it was a blast. It was so much fun to watch. And I knew pretty early that the Pacers were going to win. Andrew Nembhard didn't play. Benedict Mathurin didn't play, so Ben Shepherd and Aaron Nesmith started in their spots, which wasn't a good thing because Andrew Nembhard's a good player and Benedict Mathurin's a good player. But since those two guys didn't play last night and they're a very important part of the offense, you know, Mathurin, a guy who can have really good nights where he scores a bunch of points. Andrew Nembhard, pretty similar, another guy who can go in and fill it up because they weren't there. Who's going to take those extra shots? And the right guys took those extra shots. Tyrese Halliburton came out uber aggressive. And I talked about this yesterday here on the show about how Pacers are 14-4 when he takes 15 shots or more. And they're 15-2 when he scores 20 points or more. And those records got better. Pacers are now 15-4 when he takes 15 shots or more. And they're 16-2. Whenever he scores 20 points or more, because Tyrese Halliburton had an absolute night last night. 30 points, 8 assists, 1 turnover, 7 rebounds as well. Pretty solid. And Siakam, he went for 37 points and 6 rebounds. He took 21 shots. But Halliburton came out aggressive, which is what the Pacers need him to be. He took his first shot at the 10:25 mark in the first quarter, and he took his second shot at the 9:58 mark in the first quarter. He came out looking to score the basketball. And that sets a tone for him. You know, I was talking to Tony East about this yesterday. Once it starts for him, once he starts hunting his shot, it doesn't really go away. Okay, like he continues to look for it. And that's really important for this Pacers team because as those numbers prove, when he looks to score the basketball, the Pacers are just better. So he came out very, very aggressive, felt really good about that. And then probably about halfway through the first quarter, Jarris Walker gets subbed in and Miles Turner is on the floor. And they put Jarris Walker on Cade Cunningham, Pistons' best player, all night. He was the primary defender when he was in the game. And they had him full court press, and it was great. So Pistons inbound the ball. Jarris Walker's right there as soon as Cade turns around, and he's slowly working the ball up the floor. All of a sudden, Miles Turner runs up the floor, doubles him, and the Pacers forced an 8-second violation. Never seen that before in an NBA game. 8-second violations do not happen. The energy for the Pacers was up so high to start that game that between Tyrese Halliburton taking two shots early and, you know, Jarris Walker and Miles Turner forcing an 8-second violation, it was pretty clear that the Pacers were going to win that game last night. And then, you know, from there we just get a Siakam masterclass for the 31 minutes that he played. He scored 37 points. He was plus 32 when he was on the floor. 15 or 21 from the field. I mean, just absolutely lighting it up. Okay, like when Pascal Siakam catches the ball between 12 and 18 feet, it's 2 points. Like he's going to score every single time, right? If he misses, I'm genuinely surprised. And then you pair that with the fact that he's shooting his career best from 3 at 41%. Like the Pacers have a true, legitimate number one scorer. I talk about this with Indiana basketball all the time. What is their go-to thing? Like when Indiana basketball needs a bucket, What are their options that make you feel like they are going to score? It's a really important thing for any team. Like for Purdue, when they need a bucket, they're probably going Braden Smith, setting a screen toward his right hand. It's going to be Trey Kaufman-Renn, and they're going to run a screen and roll. And Braden Smith's going to come off of it. He's going to hit a pull-up. He's going to get to the rim. If those two options aren't there, he's going to find Trey Kaufman-Renn, who's going to get a layup, or he's going to hit a little push shot. Indiana, they don't have that. But the Pacers, however, they do. They can go Siakam and Halliburton screen and roll, or they can go, hey, Siakam, post up at the elbow. We're going to give you the basketball, and you're probably going to go score. And it works every single time. It does, and it was really working last night. Once again, he was like 15 of 21 from the field, 4 of 7 from 3 for 37 points. I mean, he was just an absolute bucket last night. And a lot of that was opened up because of Halliburton and how aggressive he was. Like, he really made teams care, or he really made the Pistons care about him last night. And it was the right kind of aggressiveness. You say, well, Jonathan, what do you mean? Sometimes Halliburton will come out and he'll hunt his shot, but he's only hunting his shot 30 feet away from the basket. He's not looking to get into the lane and score. And last night, man, he was downhill. Let's get to the rim. If I can't get to the rim, then I can hit a little pull-up jumper, because he's got a really nice pull-up game. So it was just a really good game from him last night, and I thought he opened up a lot of the stuff for really everybody else. TJ McConnell, I think every person's favorite Pacer. He played really well. He scored 14 points in just an absolute flash. Started 7 of 9 from the field, which was really big for the Pacers in that first half. Yeah, I mean, it was really impressive. There's just the offensive performance. The Pacers shot 50% from 3, which is just absolutely absurd. 50% from 3. That's insane. With that being said, the Pacers go into the fourth quarter only up by 6, 102-96 after 3 quarters. And it's like, geez, like the Pacers are playing this amazing offense, but they've given up 96 points. What's going to happen here? Well, what happened was the Pacers defense finally showed up. I've harped on this a lot. They're finally playing like good defense, second in the NBA in defensive rating over the last 10 games and all those things. And this defense that I've talked so much about just finally showed up. Pistons only scored 23 points in that fourth quarter, and they ended up winning 133-119. And you have to have that. You have to be able to get stops down the stretch, and the Pacers were able to do that in the fourth quarter. It's a large part of why they won. They full court pressed a lot. I love it when they do it. I just think it sets a really nice tone for that team, and it is just really, really impressive. Something else that's impressive is Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And, it's not as much of a debate anymore, but it used to be. Really good summer sports radio content. Who's more responsible for those 6 Super Bowls in New England, Tom Brady or Bill Belichick? And Bill Belichick put an ending to that argument yesterday with this quote.
Players win games. You can't win games without good players. I don't care who the coach is. It's impossible. You can't win without good players. I found out when I had Taylor and Banks and Harry Carson, Pepper Johnson, Jim Burt, Everson Walls, all those guys at the Giants. And same thing, when we got good at Cleveland and then at New England. I mean, it's Brady, it's McGinnis, it's Vrabel, it's Bruschi, it's Corey Dillon, it's Randy Moss, Troy Brown, Lawyer Malloy, Ty Law, Rodney Harrison. Those are the guys that won the games. Man, I didn't make any tackles. I didn't make any kicks. That was Vinatieri that made that kick in 4 inches of snow. You got to have good players. And as a coach, you want to give your players a chance to win. You want to put them in a position where if they go out there and play well, they'll have a chance to win. That's what Coach Parcells taught me is there's always a way to win. You just got to figure out what it is, and you have to give the players a chance.
They don't name it the Star Trophy. It's named the Lombardi Trophy.
Maybe they should name it the Brady Trophy. He won 7 of them.
Bill Belichick right there talking about players versus coaches. And look, what he said is exactly right. Like, you're not winning games unless you have great players. Like, it's not going to happen. And, I love that he completely and totally ended that whole Brady or Belichick thing. Because look, like it's Brady. It's always been Brady. I do like what he said at the end, and it got me thinking. I think it'd be really cool if they just named trophies after whoever had won the most of them. So, for example, the Tom Brady trophy instead of the Lombardi trophy, because Tom Brady's won 7 of them. I'm in total favor of it. Like, I think it'd be really cool if, a decade from now, we're all sitting around and Mahomes is 39 and he wins his 8th Super Bowl. And they do, the big ceremony thing and, hey, congratulations, you're champions of the world. And everyone's like, yay. And then they had a second ceremony tacked on where they like renamed the trophy the Patrick Mahomes trophy. I think that'd be so cool. I would be a huge fan of that. I think, the NBA Finals trophy should be called the Bill Russell trophy. I think that'd be so freaking cool. Like, most people don't know who Larry O'Brien is or what his impact on the game was. For those of you who don't know, he was a commissioner in the NBA for 9 years. He was a politician. Before that, they renamed the Finals trophy after him in 1984 when he stepped down. I would personally still rather the trophy be called the Walter A. Brown Trophy. If you don't know who that is, that's what the trophy was called before 1984. Walter A. Brown owned the Celtics, and he played a major role in combining the NBA and the ABA. Either way, sports should honor the player, or sports trophies should honor the player who's won the most championships by naming the trophy after them. So, the Bill Russell Trophy, the Tom Brady Trophy. I think the NBA Cup would be so much more interesting with if this is how it worked. With it being so early, like that trophy would change names so many times. Like, that'd be so cool. I think that, players would be a little more competitive about it. Because, like, I'll be honest, like, I would love to have a trophy named after me. That'd be so sick. Like, it would be. And you say, well, Jonathan, what if 2 people are tied for the most? That's a great question. Name it after the person who hit that number first. So, for example, let's say that they were to do this with the NBA Cup trophy. Right now, it would be named after LeBron James, not Giannis, because LeBron won it first. If Giannis won his second NBA Cup next year, then the name would change. That is how I would do it. I think it just adds a little more flair to it. I think it'd be sick. I think it'd be so cool. Speaking of the NBA, there's a clip going around of Adam Silver talking about making NBA games, a little bit shorter instead of doing 4 12-minute quarters, doing 4 10-minute quarters. Yeah, I don't think that solves their problem. The issue is there's way too many stoppages. There's way too many reviews. There's way too many commercials. If you've heard the clip, Adam Silver talks about how, Olympic basketball is really popular and international basketball is. And it's not because they play 4 10-minute quarters. It's because there's just not very many stoppages. That's the thing. Like I was watching Warriors and Thunder last night, and it took them 20 minutes to play the final 3 minutes. Like, that makes things really tough to watch. And so, yeah, that was a little side tangent thing. But anyway, big show today. Luke Brennaman, he's coming up here in about 25 minutes. Before he joins, though, because we're going to talk Indiana basketball, I have an idea that I don't know if Indiana fans would be in favor of it or not. I think it would actually help a lot of IU fans feel a little bit better about the state of Indiana basketball and where they're going. And I'm going to throw that idea your way when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket. 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on Twitter or, X, the Everything app. It is the Everything app because it's got The Real Jonathan Smith Show on it. You can follow me there at _ Jonathan Smith. Maybe you're watching or maybe you're listening via the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps. You can also listen on 1430 AM. Indiana basketball tomorrow night, going on the road, not very far, to play against Purdue. And they've just, last 20 years, it's been brutal. I went through it yesterday. It's just been really, really sad. I mean, so incredibly sad. Like, I feel bad for Indiana basketball. I just do. Like, I want them to be good so freaking bad, but they've just had this steady decline over the last 20 years. We've seen in that time the rise of Purdue, and we're going to continue to see that rise of Purdue and that fall of Indiana Friday night when Purdue Pete shows up and runs the Hoosiers over with a train. Okay, now, before the break, I did say that I wanted to help Indiana fans feel just like a little bit better about them and their struggles. Because, it's been a struggle for the last 20 years. And I just want to let you know that you are not alone. You are not the only evanescing college basketball program in the country. Okay, you are not the only college basketball program in the last 20 years to have a losing record in conference. Okay, like you're not the only one. And so I would like to invite the Indiana Hoosiers to the evanescing college basketball program support group. Okay, for other schools that have more invites to the NIT in the last 20 years than they do Elite Eight and Final Four appearances. Indiana isn't what it used to be, but that's okay because you're not alone. Okay, so I'm hereby inviting you officially to the evanescing college basketball programs support group. Well, Jonathan, who else is in this support group? Who else is going to be there to help me air out my feelings? It's a great question. Villanova is going to be there. They're a pretty new addition to the group. Jay Wright retired. They haven't made the NCAA tournament since. They aren't going to make it this year either, despite having the leading scorer in the country. They're 12-9, so, maybe there's a little bit of hope for them, but they're going to need some help. They want to get in. They've barely been over 500 for the last two seasons. Jay Wright left, and that was kind of it. He was this amazing basketball coach. And Villanova, to be fair, hasn't been super long. They haven't been able to replicate the success they had under Jay Wright. But then again, it's hard to win two national titles. Okay? And the other thing is, it's pretty soon after, like Indiana fans, at least you had a couple years under Mike Davis, good, a Final Four appearance, a national title appearance in the early 2000s. At least you're not like Villanova. Jay Wright left, and they fell off the cliff. They're trying to climb their way back up, but they're not. It's not even close. Got a long way to go. So Villanova will be there in this evanescing college basketball program support group just to help you kind of work through it. North Carolina, they're going to be there also. Roy Williams retired from UNC, and they've just been up and down under Hubert Davis, who I think is a pretty good coach. His first year seems like things are just going to kind of keep rolling for the Tar Heels. They go 29-10, lost in the national championship game, knocked Duke out in the Final Four. Coach K's last year, all-time high for North Carolina fans. Maybe not all-time high. Probably one of the times you won a national title. That's probably your all-time high. But still, pretty good moment. And it's just like, yeah, they're going to keep rolling. And then the next year they go 20-13 and they miss the tournament. Then last year they go 29-8 and they made the Sweet 16. And this year it appears that they're going to miss the NCAA tournament once again. And missing the tournament 2 out of 4 years is not going to fly in Chapel Hill, especially when you have high expectations, which all these programs do. But They're preseason ranked 9th this year. And part of it is that UNC bump, but the fact that they're 13-9 is not acceptable. So Hubert Davis better turn things around. And if he does, North Carolina will leave the group. Next, in the Evanescence College Basketball Program support group, we have Syracuse. Coach Boeheim left, pretty similar to Villanova. All-time great coach leaves, and you just kind of plummet. They didn't make the tournament last year, going 20-12. And right now, they're 9-11, playing in the ACC, arguably the worst Power 4 conference in college this year. They're not going to make it. Okay? And they are in the process of falling off the cliff even further down than what Villanova did. At least they've got a little grip with Coach Boeheim. So Syracuse is also in the Evanescence College Basketball Program's support group. Last team that is in this support group, and we're accepting people right now. If you want to throw anybody else into this group, you just send them right over. We will welcome them in, arms open wide. Georgetown, they're also in this group. Coach John Thompson Jr. had them rolling in the 80s and 90s. Patrick Ewing and Allen Iverson being the faces of the program back then. I mean, just absolutely rolling. They won a ton of games. They won a national championship in that 1983-84 season. Almost went back-to-back, lost the national championship game in 84-85. John Thompson Jr. then resigns in 1999. Almost there. And they just haven't been the same since. His assistant, Craig Esherick, takes over. The program just kind of fell off the map. Esherick was the head coach there for 6 seasons. They made the tournament once. Then John Thompson Jr.'s son, John Thompson III, takes over. And he improved slightly. They had it going a little bit. Started making the tournament consistently again, but there was never any super deep run to the Final Four or anything like that. I think they made the Sweet 16 once, and that was really it. Then they fire him because the results weren't there. And then they hired Patrick Ewing, and he messed that program all the way up. Now, Ed Cooley is doing what he can, trying to put them back on the map. My point is, something that I think is really important to remember in all this, is that it's really tough to hire, it's tough to hire a good coach once. It's even more difficult to do it back-to-back times. Indiana and the rest of these programs, like North Carolina and Georgetown and Villanova and Syracuse, they will get it figured out here at some point. Okay? At some point, they will have it fully figured out. They all, especially Indiana, care way too much about college basketball and being successful to not find another good head coach. And yes, Indiana's had 6 head coaches in the last 20 years. But with that being said, it's going to be 7 in the last 21 years probably at the end of this year. But they're going to find someone to come back in and restore the program. I feel very confident in that just because that's the expectation here. And you're going to show up to games, and you're going to boo, and you're going to chant, fire Woodson. You're going to do all of those things. And, do that enough, eventually you find the guy that you're looking for. Will he be Coach Knight? Absolutely not, because Coach Knight's one of the best coaches to ever grace the sport. You hire a Chris Beard or someone who can at least get you to the second weekend of the tournament. Probably so. I'm going to talk more IU hoops with Luke Brennaman at 11 here in about 12 minutes or so. Yeah, it'll be good. He's still there. He's got a pretty interesting perspective on everything that's going on with that team. Speaking of perspective, it's very important. Perspective. Perspective's important. And it's important to know who you are and kind of the role that you fill. And Kelsey Mitchell has officially re-signed with the Indiana Fever. If you watch the Pacers last night, then you know that she was there and she weighed in. They asked her about re-signing, and she seems excited. She's talking about playing with Caitlin and all those things. It's a big deal that Kelsey Mitchell's back and that she's re-signed because she played well alongside Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, right? She was an all-star last year for, I believe, the second time in her career. I like watching her play. She plays fast and all those things. It was good. Okay. She can get to the bucket. She gives the Fever a second guard to run the offense. Selfishly, I'm glad that she's back. So, well, Jonathan, what do you mean selfishly? Like, she's a good player. They need her. Yeah. You're right. But she makes the Fever watchable for me. And I say that, and you're like, what do you mean? Like, they have Caitlin Clark. Isn't that what makes her watchable for me? No, not even slightly. Because I just think that basketball's better when there's a second player who can run and initiate the offense. And Kelsey Mitchell does that for the Fever alongside Caitlin Clark. And, like, part of why I enjoy the NBA is, there's two guys on the floor for every team, even the Wizards who are terrible. There's two guys on the floor at all times who can initiate offense and go get a bucket. And you watch the WNBA, and that's just not always the case. Like, you need multiple shot creators, and Kelsey Mitchell is that second one alongside Caitlin Clark. And I am genuinely excited for what the Fever are going to look like this season. Because, like, they were pretty good last year. Made the tournament. Or the tournament. Made the playoffs. Didn't win a playoff game, but that's fine. Happens sometimes. But with that being said, like, they're going to be better this year. Year two of Caitlin Clark. She actually had an offseason. She didn't go play in that 3-on-3 league, which I'm sure that those girls were disappointed in because they didn't get to punch her in the face for like several months in a row. So, I'm sure that they'll take full advantage when we get started back up again this season. So I'm excited. The Fever are going to be good. They're going to be just a lot of fun to watch. And, when you have good point guard play, it just makes you more fun to watch. It makes you easier to watch, at least for me, as someone who just likes watching good basketball. And good point guard play is a large part of why I think Purdue's going to beat Indiana tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, Fox. It's going to be a great it's probably not going to be a great game. The atmosphere is going to be great. It's apparently a blackout. But the reason why I can tell you right now, I'm taking Purdue to win that game. I want to see if that line is out yet, is because of Braden Smith. Okay, Braden Smith is going to do what no guard on this Indiana roster can do, and that's control the game. Just that is the thing that Braden Smith does. I wouldn't say better than anyone else. But when it comes to guards, that for me is the number one thing that pops out for him. Just his ability to always be in control of the pace and his ability to get wherever he wants to get on the floor at any and all times. All right, let's pull up this line here. Where'd it go? Jeez, where's it at? Purdue and IU tomorrow night. I thought I had the line, and then it just kind of disappeared. Do they not have it? What? No way. Gosh dang it. Anyway, Purdue playing host to Indiana. I like Purdue tomorrow night because they're going to have the best player in the game. That's pretty important to me, at least. And, they don't have the line out yet. I'm dumb. Anyway, we'll talk about the line tomorrow. But anyway, Braden Smith and his ability to control the game is much greater than anything that Indiana has. Every time that Purdue needs a bucket, they're going to get it because they have Braden Smith. And he's going to run, screen and roll probably with Trey Kaufman-Wren, or they're going to run some sort of action for Fletcher Lawyer, and Braden Smith's going to make sure that it's set up properly, and things are going to go well. Purdue and Indiana are completely different in just the fact that Purdue feels incredibly organized. It feels like they always know what they're doing and what they're supposed to do on both ends of the floor, especially defensively here as of late. I mean, just suffocating defense played by the Boilermakers over the past month or so. And look at Indiana. It's just like those guys never know what they're doing. Just go watch the final 40 seconds of that game against Maryland, who beat Wisconsin last night and covered that 5.5 point spread, which is pretty impressive. That's a good team. Anyway, Purdue, Joe C. weighing in saying Purdue by 14. Joe C., you're really nice. I think it's going to be Purdue by at least 20. Seriously, Gritty, IU by 3. Gritty, come on now, Gritty. Gritty, don't do that. Don't do it to yourself. You're getting your hopes up. IU is not winning that game tomorrow night. I'd be absolutely shocked. If you want to be part of the show and you want to weigh in on who you like winning in that Purdue IU game, head over to YouTube, Indie Sports Ticket, subscribe, And you can jump into the chat there on the live stream. It's free, by the way. Don't know if you knew that, but everything on YouTube is free. Gritty, don't try to be optimistic. Be realistic. Indiana's not winning that game tomorrow night. If it was at Assembly Hall, then Indiana would have a chance because IU fans are going to show up no matter what it seems. And when they show up, like Assembly Hall can be a tough place to go in and win when the crowd's really rocking. And so can Mackey. Okay. If the game was in Bloomington, I would give Indiana some sort of chance to win that game, but absolutely not. They're going to get 20-pieced. Okay. And in honor of them getting 20-pieced, I might go to McDonald's and get 20 nuggets because why not? Okay. Gritty said, okay, Purdue by 25. That's more like it. Let's be realistic about this Indiana basketball team. They are not very good. Should they be good? Abso-freaking-lutely. They should be amongst the best teams in the country, but they aren't because they've got a coach who doesn't really seem to care. They got players who care even less than their coach does, and that's extremely problematic. The best teams in the country in any sport have players that care a ton, and it just doesn't seem like Indiana has that this year. Luke Brennaman, student reporter for Indiana, hosts a radio show down there as well, does some work with Chatterbox Sports in Cincinnati as well. He's set to join the show here in about 5 minutes. We're going to continue talking IU and Purdue. Also, Coach Painter, he'll be on the Dan Dockett Show today at 12:30. You're not going to want to miss that interview, but Luke Brennaman coming up here in about 4.5 minutes.
It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Twitter, 1430 AM, maybe it's the Indy Sports Ticket app. Either way, I am very grateful that you gave me a little bit of your time. And Luke Brennaman joins the show. You know, it's IU and Purdue week, so we're doing everything we can to get you ready for it over here at Indy Sports Ticket. Luke, what's going on, man?
Not much. I think a lot of the buildup here on campus in Bloomington is about this basketball game. And it really is unfortunate because, you know, we got to address the elephant in the room here. This isn't as hyped up as a matchup as many want it to be every year. But when you go hit the portal the way Indiana did and the expectations being inside the top 20 of the AP poll before play even started, it's like, whoa, we might get one of those Indiana-Purdue games this year. It's not ranked on ranked. Purdue's obviously a big favorite. They're one of the better teams in the entire country. The Hoosiers struggling. But I will say the loss on Sunday, you lose like that, Jonathan, and we've all played organized sports. That can be the type of loss that's like, we are embarrassed. He is a really tough place to play.
Yeah, it is. You dropped there at the end. What'd you say?
Oh, I'm sorry. I said, Mackey, tough place to play, but when you lose the way that Indiana lost on Sunday to Maryland, it gets interesting from like a team morale perspective. It's like we're getting beat up. Our own students are beating up. Our own fans are burying us right now. So what can you do to turn that around? It's beat Purdue. It's kind of like the Michigan-Ohio State story this year. And we can get in more to the matchup, but it's like a win like this can really turn it around for Indiana, but it's going to take a whole lot more than just talking about it.
It's exactly right. Joined by Luke Brennaman, who's an IU student reporter, co-host of the Dialed In podcast over at Chatterbox Sports as well. And yeah, I think you're exactly right. Like, you can change your season tomorrow night. Like, but at the same time, you know, you brought up that loss on Sunday. Teams go one of two ways after that. They either completely fall apart or they kind of surge. And like you said, they're embarrassed and they kind of find a way to rally together. Of the two directions, which way do you think Purdue's more likely to go?
Purdue's
or IU, excuse me.
Like a normal conference game after that. I think it's, or maybe you're still at the Hall. I think it's different. Purdue, I mean, this is a top 10 team in the country that we're talking about. So it's not saying, hey, we're going to come to play today, or we're not giving up yet. That's beat Purdue. They're going to have to play the best 40 minutes of basketball that they've played all year. And that's obviously a holy grail now of college basketball when it comes to one of the toughest places to win at Mackey. So a lot is going to have to go right. But to your point, I think that Indiana does take it as motivation and continues to grind and play. This is an older group. Trey Galloway, yes, he's getting paid. Anthony Leal, yes, he's getting paid in this new era of sports. But at the end of the day, these guys are playing for the badge. They're playing for the state. These are Indiana kids. These are kids who have grown up Hoosiers, and say what you want about them and their performances. Every single time they're out there, they're going to play their hearts out. You can't say the same, and I think it's proven via the eye test at some point this year about some of the other transfers that have come in addition to this team. But it's a loss like the one that happened on Sunday to Maryland at Assembly, that can turn it around for not just the Indiana guys, but everyone in the magnitude of a rivalry game like this one.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. The idea that it's Purdue, it does, I think, help lean toward the idea of them kind of surging and coming together. I am curious, though. You said that in order for them to win, they're going to have to play their best 40 minutes they've played all year. And I think the frustrating thing for me about watching IU is they'll have stretches like they did against Northwestern, where they don't allow a field goal for 10 minutes, and they have that 17-6 run against Maryland on Sunday where, you know, they come back from down 10. Like, there are really good moments. And it's, why do you think they can't string those together for a full game?
Well, I think it's offensive issues because the way a lot of these guys are wired, I mean, Miles Rice was brought over as the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, and he led all freshmen in scoring. Mackenzie Mbako, a projected first-round lottery pick coming to Indiana. Why? Because he's a natural, talented scorer. So when the shots aren't falling, I'm not going to say that they phone it in on defense, but the defensive energy is simply not there. Consistently, you can point at the defense and say that is a glaring issue. That basket was way too open. That three-pointer, I mean, the Maryland game, there's just 5 guys who are wide open for 3 in costly situations late in the second half. That's inexcusable. But what I did see was Indiana went on a stretch where they made 13 of 15 field goal attempts. That's something we haven't seen all year. And you talked about the good stretch, the bad stretch. It's been taking out the horrible stretch, and they haven't done it yet, where it's a 5.5-minute scoring drought instead of a 2.5-minute scoring drought, a 17-2 run instead of a 9-2 run. This is basketball. This is the Big Ten. Teams are going to go on runs, and they're going to beat you for stretches of time. It's about limiting that amount of time and calling timeouts when it matters. There's the coaching staff playing a part in this whole thing. But you're spot on. The difference for this Indiana team, and the most frustrating part to watch about them, is when they go on these stretches of either not scoring or giving up easy baskets, it really does look like, what the heck is going on out there? Is anyone trying? This is not good basketball. But what I saw against Maryland, I am going to say a little bit of a torch in the tunnel when it comes to light with this team. It was a stretch of dominance on the offensive end, not for just 2 minutes, but that was a long while when they came back down 10.
It was. Miles Rice finally got rolling. He's been up and down. Luke Goody was hitting shots. Like, they were actually shooting the ball well, which has been an issue for certain parts throughout the season. Joined by Luke Brennaman, IU student reporter, co-host of the Dialed In podcast over at Chatterbox Sports. And you mentioned the coaching there, calling timeouts at the right time and all those things. What are your thoughts on Mike Woodson?
Well, this is kind of interesting. We talked about this in like the 20 seconds we had before the show went back live after commercial. The standard of the Indiana coaching lineage of the last 4 to 5 names that have coached at this school, the standard, realistically, looking back on, as it may sound to some, and maybe you don't want to hear it, is to make the NCAA tournament. And when he did that his first 2 years, it was like, we have our guy, this is a great hire, and now he's absolutely on the hot seat. You look at college basketball coaches across the country, every single writer from every single region, if you were to ask them, who is a guy that needs to play or at least coach his butt off the last 10 games of conference play into the regular season, into the postseason, it's Mike Woodson. I mean, we're not going to ignore the obvious here, but this is a team in Joe Lunardi's bracketology. Like you said, this is a first 14 out. This is a team that is, sniffing around 70, 80 in the net right now in most projections. So if you have a stretch where you play at Wisconsin, at Purdue, at Michigan State, that's probably going to go down a little. Not that those aren't, quote unquote, good losses of really good teams, but Indiana's going to have to flip a couple of these games. They're going to have to. Whether it's Purdue tomorrow night, I don't know about that. But hey, maybe it's Purdue 4 weeks from now back at Assembly Hall. Or maybe you steal one on the road against Oregon when you get hot at the right time. Nonetheless, they're going to have to knock off a marquee opponent, and they have a lot of work to do, but they're still right there for as bad as it's been. And I think that's something that everyone needs to recognize.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Like, things could be a lot worse than what they are right now. You mentioned this 4-game stretch with Purdue, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Michigan State all coming up. Which of those 4 teams do you think Indiana has the best chance of beating?
Well, the first game I'm going to look at is the only home game in that stretch, and that's on Saturday, February 8th against Michigan. This is now a Michigan team who has fallen out of the top 25, and it's still a first-year head coach. Coach Bay has done a terrific job. For a lot of Indiana fans that Twitter wish he would have come to Bloomington to start the 2024-25 campaign. Nonetheless, if you can catch them at the time that, hey, maybe they keep scuffling a little bit, then they come into one of the harder atmospheres. But it's all about how Assembly Hall is. Assembly Hall is not tough to play in when they're booing their own head coach off the floor. I have mixed opinions on that whole debacle and argument, but that's the first game I'm going to look at. But an unranked win is not going to propel this fan base back into the bandwagon. An unranked win at home is not going to say everything is okay with Mike Woodson again. A win tomorrow, I really think that changes. And it's not just one individual one win. These fans and these students want to see consecutive wins of high-level basketball out of a team that went out and spent some of the most money in the country on this roster. and kind of say, hey, not this is what we paid for, but this is the talent on the team, because we know it's there and we've seen it other places. Why can't it be a cumulative thing and come to Bloomington? So these road games, they are not going to be easy, Jonathan. And this team knows that, but they need to put their head down and grind, because if they can steal 2 of those 4 games, the entire scene changes heading into mid-February.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, they don't have to steal all 4. If they can win 3 of them, that'd be great. If they can steal 2 of them, then they'll be in a really good spot. Joined by Luke Brennaman, IU student reporter and co-host of the Dialed In podcast over at Chatterbox Sports, talking Indiana basketball. What is the vibe on campus from students around this basketball team? Like, obviously they're excited for tomorrow night because, like, it's Purdue and everyone gets up for that game. But just in general, what's kind of the vibe been?
Well, the vibe is really weird because of football. The vibe with football, even if this basketball team was, top 15 in the country, obviously Indiana lives, breathes, and dies with basketball. But we have a football team that was once inside the AP top 7, and the energy of Memorial Stadium week in and week out, it kind of started off as just like, oh, everyone needed a break. It's not the end of the world. We're frustrated. This is why I came to school here, Jonathan, to go to Assembly Hall on a Tuesday night and see Indiana ranked playing Illinois ranked, and that place be jumping. The issue is it's not. And that's kind of defines the vibe. I think that it depends kid to kid how much you really care, or how big of a fan you are, how loyal you are to this program, whether you're an Indiana kid or out of state like myself. But there's certainly something still here with the history of Assembly Hall. And at least I'm only here for 4 years. So I look at it as I'm going to do everything I can to support and cheer this team on. I know other students have different opinions, and they're saying, I've phoned it in. They don't hustle. They don't play for the state of Indiana. They don't play for the students. I think you can save all of that personally. And I said that at the start of the show. It comes down to figuring it out with this new roster, and that's something they haven't done. You can obviously put a lot of blame on the coaching staff with that, but the players are the ones missing shots. This team's not shooting the ball well from 3. They haven't played statistically great defense. So it's tough to describe the entire vibe of a 40,000 student campus, and a majority of them care about this basketball team. But I'm going to go back to what I've said this entire show. A win during this stretch against one of these high-level ranked teams, I think you start turning heads, and that's the only way you can do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. They need some sort of, like you kind of said, like some sort of signature win that kind of gets people re-engaged, because I think one of the cool things about Indiana is, like, people want to be engaged in a positive way so badly. Like, if Mike Woodson's able to go to Mackey on Friday night and win, like, I don't think they're going to boo him on, February 8th when they're at home playing against Michigan, unless things go really bad. Like, it's just, like, people want to be invested, and if they can just grab one of these 4 games, then I think we'll kind of see that again. But Purdue's really tough. What are your thoughts on them?
They're so tough, and it's almost unexpected tough. And if you go back through their schedule, and when they lost Zach Edey, I think a lot of people were like, okay, finally, we're going to get a break from this Purdue run of 4 and 7 footers who are just dominant. But it's been a new style of basketball. It's been guard heavy. It's been forward heavy rather than center heavy. They can play quick if they want to. They can slow you down, and Matt Painter can illustrate an offense that can line up an open 3, and they knock it down. They play really well at home. I would go as far as saying, if you look at Purdue's schedule, I mean, their win against Maryland suddenly looks a whole lot better. They've beaten ranked Ole Miss. They beat the 4th team in the country, Alabama, at the start of the season in dominant fashion by 9. They just don't slip up is the best thing I can say. They go on the road to Eugene to play a top 20 Oregon team. Yeah, we're going to guard you and hold you under 60 points and beat you. They can beat you so many different ways. They scored north of 100 points against Nebraska, and then they score 65 and win against Oregon. The Ohio State loss was one to look out for, and I think that's something that the Indiana staff is probably all over in film, was how the Buckeyes were able to beat Purdue, not only in a huge upset where they were 11-point underdogs, but also on the road, because that's what Indiana's trying to do. So kind of getting into the X's and O's for that, I'm not a basketball wizard when it comes to that coaching type of stuff, but that's what these guys are paid the big bucks to do. And that's a game where, although a loss for Purdue, that's when they've looked vulnerable the last couple of weeks. So I'm sure they're going to try and look to that.
Joined by Luke Brennaman, IU student reporter, co-host of the Dialed In podcast over at Chatterbox Sports. Yeah, if they want to do what Ohio State did, I would recommend having someone shoot 8 of 10 from the floor and 6 of 8 from 3. That's just me though. I think that might be helpful because that Parrish kid for Ohio State just kind of got hot, and that was all that she wrote. So besides that, like who's the guy for IU that has to play well in order for them to beat Purdue tomorrow night?
I think it comes down to the tandem of Rice and Mbako, because when they play defense, Indiana it finds themselves quite sound defense. I mean, we know Mike Woodson. He is a defensive guy. He loves playing defense. He would rather win a game 1-0 than 105-104. That's just the type of guy that he is, and that's how he coaches. So it starts on that end of the floor because their defensive philosophy isn't bad in my perspective. They go to zone sometimes, they switch it up, but scoring the ball, Rice and Mbako, if they can both have, say, it's going to take probably north of 15 for each of them, then that takes a lot of the pressure off of Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal. Realistically, those guys are defenders. Trey Galloway's a really good facilitator when he's not turning the ball over, but he makes good passes on those pick and rolls. He's not so much the guy that is going to come off a ball screen and pull up from 3 like they've asked him to do this season. So Miles Rice, take control of the offense the way you did against Maryland. Get in a flow and start setting guys up, because we know Ballo can finish at the rim. We know Mbako can knock down open jumpers. And then that starts happening, and the other pieces that are the quote-unquote role players who have found themselves in too big of elevated roles this year can really start doing their job instead of trying to fill in for someone else. So Rice and Mbako are mine too.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially on Miles Rice, because, look, the best team that Mike Woodson has had at IU was when Jalen Hood-Schifino was there. And look, it's said every year, it is arguably the biggest cliche in college basketball. You have to have good guards if you want to win games, especially big games. And Miles Rice was supposed to be that guy this year. And he's just been up and down. And if he's up, I don't need him to go get 30 like Jalen Hood-Schifino did. What was that? Two years ago now? Like, I don't need that, but kind of like you said, like they just need him to score and to facilitate the offense. If he does that, then like they'll have a chance to win. With that being said, I don't know if he will do that because Purdue defensively has just been really good here as of late. I like Purdue tomorrow night. Who do you like?
I like Purdue. I'm not going to come on here and be crazy and say Indiana. They really haven't given you much to think that way. I think a win against Maryland, and maybe the student and optimistic part of me with a little bit or a whole lot of bias involved would want to say Indiana. I just don't know if they're ready to get a win like the one that it would take tomorrow. The big thing about tomorrow with me, it's a building block. If we fall tomorrow, I don't want it to be the way it is last year, where Zach Edey's banking in a 3 and it's a mockery and everything that Purdue wants in this type of rivalry game, to laugh at Indiana. And that's the type of loss that, unlike Maryland, you don't bounce back from and you're hungry from. That's kind of when guys start diving out, getting out of the, you know what I'm saying there? So when it comes to tomorrow, play a good first half. Be in the game down the stretch. If you lose in the final 8 minutes by 6 to 8 points, but boy, you fought, you shot well, you played hard defensively, you ran in transition, that's when it's like, okay, maybe we can go to Madison now and pick up a ranked win. Maybe we can build off something like that. So I'm looking for more of the effort and competitiveness out of this team tomorrow more than anything, because this is a really long season. And if you fall to a top 10 team on the road, you have plenty of other chances to play your way into the NCAA tournament.
Last question for you, Luke, and I'll let you go. So during football season, Indiana ran it up a little bit on Purdue. Do you think that has any impact on what Purdue does if they're up big late in that game tomorrow?
It's a really good question. It's actually great observation. I'm sure that's probably swirling around a lot of Purdue Twitter feeds right now. I think for the sake of Indiana Purdue, it's a basketball rivalry. So I'm not sure. I'm not going to say they don't care about it, but it's more like Purdue, this is our sport. This is our court. This is now our state. And they've proven that the past couple years. So they're guard heavy. They can shoot the three. It's more going to be one of those things. If they're getting open looks and knocking them down, the game is going to get ugly, and they're not just going to stop. If anything, it's added a motivation that's your rival. I don't know if I'm going to say they're thinking about the football game, but if that is in the back of their mind, that could be another thing going against the Mike Woods and Indiana Hoosiers.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like you said, it is a basketball rivalry. Matt Painter seems like a really nice guy. I don't think he's in there like, they crushed us in football, so we gotta do this for the football team.
Oh no.
And so yeah, I think you're right, Luke. Thanks for your time, man.
Thank you so much. Hopefully we can check in again and see how they do on Friday night. I appreciate your time.
Most def. See you, buddy. That is Luke Brennaman. You can check him out on Twitter at BrennyPXP. IU student reporter, does a really good job. Gotta get the young guys in here from time to time. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, speaking of young guys, Anthony Richardson, his develop. Does it even matter? I got that answer when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Twitter, Indy Sports Ticket app. Maybe you're just listening via 1430 AM. Either way, it is greatly, greatly appreciated. Anthony Richardson is hopefully already started the most important offseason of his life. You know, he's in the process of trying to prove that he can be the guy and that he's worthy of the fifth-year option and maybe even a big-time extension at some point down the line. Colts fans are certainly hopeful that Anthony Richardson develops. Everyone in that building is hoping he can put it all together this offseason. Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen, their jobs depend on it. Guys like Michael Pittman Jr. and Zaire Franklin and DeForest Buckner, like they signed extensions thinking that Anthony Richardson would be the guy going forward. And, you know, there's just a lot weighing on him in terms of this next Indianapolis Colts season. And I have to ask this question, like, does it even matter if Anthony Richardson develops? Like, if Anthony Richardson reaches his full potential, doesn't matter. Because it just kind of seems like if Patrick Mahomes is in the AFC, then it doesn't really matter who else is playing. The Chiefs and the Eagles are set up to be playing for their, you know, what feels like millionth Super Bowl. But they're playing the Eagles in a little over a week, right? Rematch of that 2023 Super Bowl. And every single postseason, the legend of Patrick Mahomes just continues to grow year after year after year. I mean, you know, the worst season or the worst finish of Patrick Mahomes' career is losing in overtime in the AFC Championship game. The closest person to Patrick Mahomes is Tom Brady, or rather, the closest person to Tom Brady is Patrick Mahomes. So I wanted to go back and look at Tom Brady's career. You know, he wins 7 Super Bowls, plays in 10, you know, which means he lost 3. Who are the quarterbacks that won? Who are the teams that won a Super Bowl the years that Tom Brady did not? Tom Brady was a starter for 22 years. So he didn't play his rookie season. So, you know, Trent Dilfer won it that year. I don't really count that year because Tom Brady wasn't playing. But from year 2 on, we're going to count it. Here are the quarterbacks that won a Super Bowl during the 23 or 22-year Tom Brady era. Brad Johnson, Ben Roethlisberger, twice. Peyton Manning, twice. Eli Manning, twice. Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco, Russell Wilson, Nick Foles, Patrick Mahomes, and Matthew Stafford. So in Brady's 22 years of being the official starting quarterback for the New England Patriots, 11 other quarterbacks won a Super Bowl. And the teams and quarterbacks that won had one of two things. They had either an outstanding roster around their quarterback. Think Joe Flacco and the Ravens. Think Nick Foles and the Eagles, or Eli Manning and the Giants, or Brad Johnson and the Buccaneers. Or the team that won had one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL, and they somehow, some way figured out a way to get past the Patriots and win the whole thing. I mean, for a lot of those years when Tom Brady was at his peak, it was him, Peyton Manning, Big Ben, Drew Brees, and Aaron Rodgers. Those were the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL for most of the time that Tom Brady was at his peak. And then later on, you know, the second half of his career when, you know, Mahomes wins his first and Matthew Stafford wins his probably first and only, those guys were hovering around top 5 quarterback in the NFL conversation then. And then Russell Wilson in the early 2010s was pretty incredible as well. Plus, that was a really good roster around him. But when you look at the 4 exceptions, the 4 guys that weren't top 5 quarterbacks, you know, the rosters are just amazing. Joe Flacco has that formidable Ravens defense. Nick Foles has this incredibly complete roster, and Alshon Jeffrey was awesome that postseason. And Eli Manning had pretty good weapons, but, you know, that defense had a pretty nasty front 4. And, you know, Brad Johnson had a defense that only gave up 37 points in 3 playoff games. And, you know, to win the Super Bowl, like, you have to have one of those 2 things, a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, or just this incredibly amazing roster. Now, let me just ask a question. Like, yes, Anthony Richardson has a ton of potential. Talked about it ad nauseum. You know, quarterback defense attorney. Let's do it. Even if he fully develops, like, are we sure that peak Anthony Richardson's top 5 quarterback in the NFL after what we've seen these last 2 years? Is he really going to be better than Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes or whoever you think that 5th best quarterback in the NFL is? Maybe you think it's Jaden Daniels after only 1 year. Maybe you think it's Matthew Stafford, even though he's a little bit older. He's probably going to retire soon. Maybe you think it's Justin Herbert or Jordan Love. Whoever you think that 5th best quarterback in the NFL is the best version of Anthony Richardson going to be better than them? Probably not. After watching Anthony Richardson these last 2 seasons, answering this question of what is the peak of Anthony Richardson? What does he look like fully developed? And the answer is Cam Newton. This big, athletic specimen running quarterback who has some streakiness to their accuracy. Cam Newton had 1 great year in his 11-year career. He wins the MVP. They go 15-1. They have a chance to win the Super Bowl, but they run into Von Miller and the Broncos and they lose. Okay, Cam Newton had 1 great year, and the rest of it was meh. And as of today, that kind of feels like what we're headed towards with Anthony Richardson. Let's say he gets better. Okay, and he's got years where he's completing 63% of his passes and those types of things. Cool. And then maybe he has 1 year. 1 great year, where he completes 68% of his passes and he's running the ball well and he's doing all those things. Are we, do we really think he's going to be Patrick Mahomes that year? It's laughable. Just even that thought. And so the other option for the Colts to win a Super Bowl with Anthony Richardson would be to build this elite roster. And that doesn't seem to work against Mahomes. Who has beaten him? Tom Brady twice, Joe Burrow. Elite quarterbacks. The Steelers, they have this amazing defense every single year. They can't get out of the first round. The Eagles, their roster in 2023 was amazing. It was really good. Didn't matter. They couldn't beat Mahomes. The Bills roster this year, it's the most complete roster they had with Josh Allen, an outstanding offensive line. Okay, Josh Allen was sacked less than any other quarterback in the NFL this year. They got James Cook, who was a 1,000-yard rusher, could have ran for more yards, but they wanted to save him late in the season for the postseason. Matt Milano is one of the best middle linebackers in the game. A really good Bills roster with Josh Allen, the 2nd best quarterback in the NFL. Couldn't get it done against this Chiefs team that, is good, but this isn't peak Chiefs. It's just not. Okay, this year, Eagles, they have the 2nd best roster in the NFL. Doesn't really seem like it's going to matter. Nothing seems to matter so long as Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are together. So even if Anthony Richardson reaches his full-on potential, do we really think that Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen are going to beat, Sean McDermott and Josh Allen? Probably not. John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson? Probably not. Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow? Probably not. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes? Definitely not. Because the Chiefs are just that good. And look, there's going to be a year, Mahomes isn't going to win it every year. It's not going to happen. There's going to be a year where he gets hurt, pretty similar to 2008 when, Tom Brady tears his ACL and Big Ben goes on to win his 2nd Super Bowl, in part because Tom Brady got hurt. That's something like that will happen to Mahomes at some point. Maybe it's not him who gets hurt, but maybe it's like the Super Bowl where they lost to the Buccaneers and all of his offensive linemen are hurt. Maybe something like that happens. And that just kind of seems like the year that Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen's going to win it all, not Anthony Richardson. Even if he does develop into a really good player. I don't know. Patrick Mahomes is so good that it's just kind of even if he gets better, what's going to happen? Probably not much. Because you're going to run into Mahomes and Reed, and that'll be all that she wrote. Speaking of all she wrote, Pacers put it on the Pistons last night. Pistons are not very good. No, actually, that's not true. The Pistons are good. Cade Cunningham's good. They have a losing record now. They're 23-24. They're fighting for a playoff spot. But the Pacers are clearly better than the Pistons. People are trying to push this rivalry narrative. It's not a rivalry. Pacers-Pistons is not a rivalry in the slightest. I'll tell you why when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. The real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe, join the chat, do all those good fun things. Maybe you're listening on Twitter, _ Jonathan Smith, if you want to follow me there. At Ticket 1430 if you want to follow the station. And yeah, maybe you're listening via the Indy Sports Ticket app as well, which you can download wherever you get your apps. The Pacers beat the Pistons last night, which is great. I'm so glad, but quit trying to make this a rivalry. This is not a rivalry. It's not. Say, oh, well, they don't like each other. It's fine. A lot of those guys don't like each other. It's not a rivalry. And it's not because the Pacers always win those games. Pacers are 7-1 against the Pistons these last two seasons. And it's not a rivalry if one team continues to win every single game. Okay, so the Pistons can be mad that they keep losing to the Pacers and all those things, but this isn't a rivalry until the Pistons can actually beat the Pacers. So with that being said, let's talk about the actual game. Tyrese Halliburton talked about this a little bit yesterday, man. When he takes 15 shots or more, the Pacers tend to win those games. When he scores 20 points or more, the Pacers almost always win those games. It's really impressive. And last night, we got Tyrese Halliburton taking 17 shots, and they won. They're now 15-4 when he takes 15 shots or more. He scored 30 points, which means the Pacers are now 16-2 when he scores 20 points or more. And it became pretty apparent very early that the Pacers were going to win that game last night because Tyrese Halliburton came out incredibly aggressive. Comes out, takes his first shot 90 seconds into the game. Forget getting my teammates going. I'm scoring the basketball. Took his second shot 30 seconds later. So in 2 minutes, he had already taken 2 shots, which doesn't sound like a super big deal. But for Tyrese Halliburton, it is because he's a unselfish guy who wants to get his teammates involved, and he ended up doing that. He finished the night with 8 assists, but this team is so much better when he's actually scoring the basketball. So he comes out aggressive, and that's, a really positive sign when things started. Then, about halfway through the first quarter, we get the first substitution. It's Jarris Walker in off the bench. And, Pacers are shooting free throws. They make the second one. Pistons inbound the ball. Pacers are up in a full court press. They got Jarris Walker guarding the Pistons' best player, Cade Cunningham, full court. And Jarris Walker and Miles Turner force an 8-second violation, something that you really never see in the NBA. And that told me that the energy from the Pacers was up a lot. So that paired with Tyrese Halliburton really looking to score told me in those first, 5, 6, 7 minutes that the Pacers were undoubtedly going to win that game last night. And they ended up doing it. A large part of it was Halliburton and his aggressiveness and him scoring the basketball and setting up teammates. But, didn't hurt that Pascal Siakam scored 37 points. He's so freaking good at basketball. He's so good. It is so much fun to watch Pascal Siakam play when he had it going the way that he did last night. I'm just convinced that if Pascal Siakam catches the basketball 12 to 18 feet from the bucket, it's 2 points. Just like, go ahead, put it on the scoreboard, mark it down. It was 2 points every time last night. He finished 15 to 21 from the floor. And the aggressiveness from Siakam and Halliburton was so nice. And I've said this multiple times before that the Pacers have too many good players. They've got 11 guys who can legitimately play, which is great. But when you have that many players, I think it takes shots away from Halliburton and Siakam. The reason why they took more shots last night is because Andrew Nembhard did not play. That's a guy who's going to take 5, 6, 7 shots a night, and he should because he's a good offensive player. And then you got Mathurin, who's going to take, 10-ish. Maybe it's 8 shots, maybe it's 12, but somewhere around 10 shots a night. And when you have, those players in the game, they take shots away from Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton just because of the way that the Pacers run their offense. And so I'm very intrigued to see what the Pacers do because they're not going to be able to keep all these good players for forever. They're going to have to decide who to pay, who not to pay, who to trade, who to keep, and all those things. And it'll be very, very interesting. But as long as they keep Siakam and Halliburton, they're going to be fine because of Halliburton's ability to create for other people and Siakam's ability to go get a bucket whenever he needs it. And, I've talked about this a little bit with the Indiana Hoosiers throughout the season, but when you watch them play, like they don't have a go-to thing to get a bucket. Whereas like you watch Purdue, they really need to score. They're gonna run a ball screen for Braden Smith. Trey Kaufman-Ren's gonna set it to Braden Smith's right. That's his dominant hand. He's gonna come off. He's gonna get to a pull-up jumper, or he's gonna get to the rim for a layup. If neither one of those things are open, he's probably gonna find Trey Kaufman-Renn roll into the bucket for a layup or one of those little push shots that Trey Kaufman-Renn's really good at hitting. And when you look at the Pacers, they have that thing. And really, they have two options for it. One, they can go ball screen, Siakam for Halliburton. Halliburton going right. He can get downhill to the rim, or he can find Siakam on a little short roll where he can hit a little 12-footer. Or they can just give Siakam the ball. And that's kind of what it was last night. Every time they needed a bucket, they went to Pascal Siakam, and he scored. It was really impressive. He played probably his best game in a Pacers uniform in general. So he's, not only scoring from 12 to 18 feet, he's also shooting a career best from three at 41%, which is pretty spectacular. We got the TJ McConnell spark. He had 14 points, 15 minutes into the game. So like with 9 minutes left to go in the second quarter, he already had 14 points. He was 7 of 9 from the floor. Didn't make a shot after that, but that big burst early was a big deal for him and for the Pacers, kind of stretching out that lead early. Just a really impressive game from them. I thought Miles Turner played well, protecting the rim, knocking down threes when he's open. He's still shooting over 40% from three on the season the last time I checked, which is really important because he spaces the floor and does all of those really important things. And yeah, like this Pacers team is just really rolling right now. 10-2 in the month of January, which is just insane. And, when you shoot 50% from three, like the Pacers did last night, that really, really helps. And when you have the depth that the Pacers do, it doesn't matter when you're missing two starters. You just slide other guys in, and it's impressive. And as much as I've talked about Siakam scoring last night and Halliburton being aggressive, the most impressive thing and the thing that we didn't see from this Pacers team last year was the defense. Pacers had just an awesome game offensively last night, right? 19 of 38 from three. They shot 57% from the floor. They're getting to the foul line. They took 31 free throws. Really impressive. But the most impressive thing was the defense. Fourth quarter starts. It's 102-96. Pacers are up. They're scoring all these points, but they're only up by 6. And at some point, you have to get stops. You have to get stops late in games. And this is part of why Andrew Nembhard's so important. He's been probably their best defender this year. Really good defender, unless he's having to defend Jalen Brunson. Things didn't go too well in the playoffs last year when that happened. But aside from that, pretty good defender. And he's kind of the guy when the Pacers need stops. And they didn't have him last night. And it didn't matter because the Pacers figured out how to get stops anyway. They only gave up 23 points in the fourth quarter after giving up 33, 31, and 32 in the first three quarters. They turned it on in the fourth, got stops when they needed it, and they continued to score the basketball. This Pacers team playing as well as anyone in the league right now, 10-2 in the month of January with absolutely no signs of slowing down anytime soon. Ben Shepherd, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him. Played great defense, also hit 4 timely threes. Seemed like every time the Pacers needed someone to hit a shot, he was the guy that hit the shots. Indiana taking on Purdue tomorrow night. Can't wait for this game. It's going to be so good. Actually, probably not. I like Purdue by a lot because we just continue to see the downward spiral of the Indiana Hoosiers. I mean, just worse and worse every year. All right, that's just kind of the way that it feels over the last 20 years, which isn't true. I know they had some really, really bad years probably about a decade ago, but while Indiana continues to get worse and kind of plateau at mediocre under Mike Woodson, Purdue just keeps stacking wins. They just keep rising up, and that's going to continue on. Tomorrow night, Purdue Pete, you show up and run the Hoosiers over with a train, and that'll be it. And these two programs over the last 20 years have just really kind of separated from one another. But Indiana, you're not alone. You're not alone. There are other big-time college basketball programs that have fallen off the map a little bit. Villanova, these last 3 years, Jay Wright retired. They haven't made the NCAA tournament since. They're probably not going to make it again this year. They're 12-9. Good luck. They've barely been over 500 the last 2 seasons. Jay Wright was an amazing coach, and ever since he left, Villanova hasn't been able to replicate it, right? They just kind of fell off when Jay Wright walked out the door. North Carolina, Roy Williams retired from North Carolina. They've been up and down under Hubert Davis, right? His first year, they go 29-10, losing the national championship game, beat Duke in the Final Four. That's pretty cool. The next year, they went 20-13, and they missed the tournament. Last year, they went 29-8 and made the Sweet 16. And then this year, it appears that they're going to miss the tournament again. And look, I'm not a genius, but missing the tournament 2 out of 4 years isn't going to fly in Chapel Hill. And they had pretty high expectations this year, pretty similar to Indiana. They were preseason ranked 9th, and I think part of that is the UNC bump, but the fact that they're 13-9 in a bad ACC is not acceptable. They're going to have to figure out a way to get things turned around. Maybe they beat Duke on Saturday, and that gets them rolling in the right direction, but I wouldn't count on it. Syracuse, pretty similar to Villanova. Coach Boeheim leaves, and they just kind of fall off a cliff. They went 20-12 last year, didn't make the tournament. They're 9-11 right now, probably not going to make the tournament again. So they just kind of continue to fall lower and lower since Coach Boeheim left. Georgetown, pretty similar thing. Coach Thompson Jr. had them rolling in the 80s and 90s. Patrick Ewing, Allen Iverson, national champs that 83-84 season. Almost went back-to-back, lost in the national title game that 84-85 season. And then John Thompson Jr. resigns in 1999. They haven't been the same since. Craig Esherick takes over. He ruined the program, made the tournament once in 6 seasons. Then John Thompson III shows up, restores them slightly. They started consistently making the tournament again, but never really any deep runs, no Final Fours or anything like that. Then they hire Patrick Ewing, and Patrick Ewing messed that program all the way up. And now Ed Cooley is in the process of doing what he can to get it going for them. You say, Jonathan, why are you bringing this up? Why should we care about all these other programs? My point is, it's really hard to hire a great coach once, and all 4 or 5 of those programs did it at least once. And it's even more difficult to make back-to-back great hires. Indiana and the rest of these programs, however, they will figure it out at some point. Indiana is not going to be bad for the rest of eternity. It's not going to happen. They all, especially Indiana, I would argue Indiana more so than any of those other schools, care way too much about basketball to not find another successful head coach. So yes, Tom Crean wasn't the answer. Look, they've hired 6 coaches in the last 20 years. None of them have really panned out. Sure. Oh, but Tom Crean was great. No, he wasn't. Never made it past a Sweet 16. And, a Sweet 16 at Indiana is cool, but they don't hang banners for Sweet 16s in Assembly Hall. They don't do that. They hang them for one thing and one thing only, and that's the national title. That is the standard at Indiana. And so, sure, Tom Crean made 3 Sweet 16s. Didn't win any of them, even when he was a number 1 seed. Okay? So, it's tough to hire great coaches once. Tough to do it back-to-back. I do think, though, that Indiana will get it figured out at some point because they care way too much about basketball for it to never be figured out again. So that's going to do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Make sure you're tuned back in tomorrow. We got Purdue and IU, baby. It's going to be good. We got a couple good guests lined up. Zach Gray should be coming on. Aaron Torres, he's going to join the show tomorrow at 11. So we're lined up pretty well there. Here in about 35 minutes, speaking of Purdue, Indiana, Coach Painter, he's going to join the Dan Dockett Show just to kind of get things ready for Indiana and Purdue. That's going to be great. Coach Mike Lewis coming on at 1 o'clock as he always does to get us rolling on Ball State and everything that they got on. So just a great show lined up today for the Dan Dockett Show. He'll be on from noon to 3. Make sure you're tuned in and listening to all of that. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. Make sure you are subscribed over at Indies Sports Tickets. Yeah, because that's where we stream the YouTube and all those things. You can be part of the chat, be part of the conversation, which is pretty freaking great. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll talk to you tomorrow starting at 10 a.m.